My son's soft whimper dragged Chloe out of a restless sleep. Her eyes flew open in the darkness, and her hand instinctively went to Leo's forehead. His skin was scorching, like someone had pressed a burning coal to his skin. Her heart lurched painfully in her chest. Leo, her 5-year-old boy, was burning up again. She fumbled for the lamp, its dim light spilling over the bedroom. Outside, New York's distant hum still vibrated through the night, but inside the huge Westchester mansion, everything felt eerily silent. The only sounds were Leo's labored, uneven breaths and the frantic pounding of Chloe's heart. She grabbed the thermometer with shaking hands and slipped it under his tongue, stroking his hair while counting the seconds in a whisper. When the measurement beeped, her stomach dropped. 102.2 degrees, she whispered, staring at the red digits. It felt like a knife to her eyes. They had already given him medicine earlier that afternoon. It had helped for a while, but the fever had climbed back like a monster that refused to let go. She ran to the bathroom and flung open the cabinet, shoving aside bottles and bandages. Empty. The small orange bottle of children's fever medicine lay on its side, bone dry. No more doses left. Her throat tightened. "Oh, we have to go to the hospital," she whispered to herself, already scooping Leo's limp, overheated body into her arms. He whimpered, but didn't fully wake, his small arms resting weakly against her. Chloe pressed a kiss to his damp forehead and bolted out of the room, down the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the cold hardwood floor. In the living room, Ethan was lounging on the sofa as if it were any other peaceful evening. One leg crossed over the other, he was scrolling through his phone while whistling a cheerful tune. He wore a crisp designer shirt and perfectly pressed trousers, his hair slicked back with gel. Beside him sat a packed suitcase and a sleek leather carry-on, ready to leave. "Ethan," Chloe called, her voice shaking. "Ethan, please! Leo's fever is really high. We need to get him to the emergency room. Now!" Ethan barely looked up. When he did, it was with impatience rather than concern. His brows knitted in irritation, and he gave her that familiar look he reserved for unwanted interruptions. "Can't you handle one, kid?" he snapped. "It's just a fever. Give him medicine. Why are you always so dramatic?" "We're out of medicine," Chloe choked out, tears already stinging her eyes. "I checked. His fever is back and it's higher than before. I'm scared he'll have a seizure. Please, Ethan, we need to go. Right now." He stood up slowly, but not toward her. He reached down for his suitcase and straightened his shirt, his movements cold and deliberate. "Call an Uber," he said flatly. "I have something important to take care of." Chloe's mouth fell open. "Important? More important than our son?" she nearly screamed. "You promised we'd go to the Hamptons together tomorrow. You said it was a family trip. Me, you, and Leo. You said—" He laughed, a low, mocking sound that twisted her stomach. "The Hamptons?" he sneered. "You really think you're going?" His gaze swept over her, her messy hair, her oversized t-shirt, the faint stains of formula and food on her clothes. "Look at you, Chloe. You smell like spit up and stale leftovers. You look like a maid, not my wife. Do you honestly think I want to show you off in front of my friends?" She felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. What are you saying?" "This trip is for me and Jessica," he said casually, as though he were mentioning a business colleague. The name landed on her chest like a sledgehammer. Jessica, the beautiful young woman Chloe had pretended not to notice. The one who called at odd hours. The one whose perfume she'd once smelled faintly on Ethan's shirt when he came home at 2 a.m. She had known, deep down, she had known there was someone else. But hearing him admit it so casually in the same breath that he dismissed his feverish child shattered something inside her. "How could you?" Chloe whispered. "Ethan, how could you say that? How could you throw away 6 years of marriage like this? Your son is sick. He needs you." "You're ruining my mood," Ethan muttered, pulling out his phone. He turned slightly away from her and dialed. When the call connected, his tone changed instantly, dripping with warmth and charm. "Hey, Jess," he cooed. "Yeah, I'm on my way. Just a small delay. My blind wife is making a scene." Chloe stood there frozen, clutching Leo as if he were the only solid thing left in her world. Ethan ended the call and looked at her with eyes as cold as glass. "Stay home," he said. "Don't you dare go anywhere and embarrass me. If you ruin this trip for me, Chloe, I swear you'll regret it." He grabbed his suitcase and strode to the door. Chloe snapped. She ran after him, blocking the front door with her body, Leo still in her arms. Tears streamed down her face as she stood between Ethan and his car. "You can't go," she cried. "He's your son, Ethan. He might be in danger. He's so hot. He can't even stay awake properly. You can't just walk away." He rolled down the car window slowly, his face twisting into something dark and cruel. "Move," he growled. "Do you want to die?" "I'm not moving," she said hoarsely. "Not until you take us to the hospital." In one swift motion, he flung open the car door and lunged at her. His fingers tangled harshly into her hair, yanking so hard pain exploded at her scalp. "Ah!" she screamed, almost dropping Leo in the struggle. Startled, Leo began to cry, his weak sobs echoing through the quiet driveway. Ethan didn't stop. He dragged Chloe back into the house, his grip brutal, his eyes blazing with a rage she had never seen before. He shoved her through the hallway and toward the back of the mansion, down a narrow corridor that led to the old storage cellar. Chloe's stomach knotted in dread. That room was barely used, filled with broken furniture, old boxes, and the smell of damp wood and mold. "Ethan, what are you doing? Stop! Please, please don't." He ignored her. He threw open the heavy wooden door, pushed her and Leo inside, and before she could steady herself, he slammed the door shut. The sound of the bolt sliding into place was loud and final, like a judge's gavel. "Ethan!" Chloe screamed, pounding on the door with her free hand. "Open the door! Ethan! Our son is sick! You can't leave us in here!" There was only silence, then distant footsteps, then the faint rumble of the car engine fading into the night. The darkness swallowed her whole. Chloe stood there trembling, one arm wrapped around her burning child, the other hand still on the rough wood of the door. She pressed her ear against it, hoping, praying, to hear returning footsteps. Nothing. Only the stillness of the old house, muffled by thick walls and indifference. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the cold concrete floor. Leo's cries faded into pitiful whimpers. His body felt even hotter now, his breathing shallow and fast. In the suffocating blackness of the cellar, Chloe could hear every tiny sound. His gasps, her own uneven breaths, the faint scuttling of mice in a corner. The air was thick with dust and mildew, making every inhale feel like swallowing mud. "Leo," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm here. Mommy's here." She struggled to orient herself in the dark, slowly shifting until her back pressed against something solid, a stack of old boxes or a broken cabinet. She took off her thin cardigan, dampened it with her own tears and what little saliva she could muster, then gently wiped his forehead and neck, trying to cool him even a tiny bit. He stirred, his lips dry and cracked. In his delirium, he murmured, "Daddy, Ethan, Daddy, where are you?" Chloe's chest cracked open. Her tears fell faster, landing on his overheated skin. He still thought of his father as a hero, a good man, a protector. He had no idea that the man he adored had just thrown him into a dark room like trash so he could enjoy a weekend with his mistress. Chloe tilted her head back and stared into the emptiness above. Somewhere high up, boarded over with old planks, was a single small window. A thin sliver of moonlight escaped through the cracks, tracing faint white lines across the cluttered floor. It wasn't enough to see clearly, but enough to remind her how trapped they were. Her thoughts slipped backward, unbidden, into the past. She remembered the first time she met Ethan. Back then, he wasn't this cold, unrecognizable man. He had been charming, talented, a young architect with big dreams and a crooked smile. She had been a college senior with secondhand textbooks and a heart that believed in fairy tales. Ethan had seemed like a dream. He told her he loved her kindness, that he didn't care if she was an orphan or that she came from a modest neighborhood. He said he wanted to build a life with her, that he would protect her always. She had married him despite his mother's objections. Eleanor had looked down on Chloe from day one, seeing only her lack of pedigree and money, but Ethan had held Chloe's hand at the altar and promised before God and everyone that he would cherish her forever. For a time, he kept that promise. The early years of their marriage had been warm and sweet. Ethan helped with housework, made her coffee, took her on little surprise outings. When she became pregnant with Leo, he had cried in joy, kissing her swollen belly every night, whispering to the baby about all the things they would do together. Those memories now felt like they belonged to someone else. When had everything changed? Perhaps it started when the family's construction company hit trouble and Ethan had to beg his mother for financial help. Or maybe it began when he started working late with new partners and came home smelling of expensive perfume and smoke. When Jessica appeared with her lean figure, bright laugh, and endless compliments, Ethan's gaze slowly shifted away from Chloe. He stopped coming home for dinner. He stopped asking how her day was. Gone were the warm massages and spontaneous kisses. In their place were sharp words, cold stares, and nights where the other side of the bed remained cold and empty. Chloe had clung desperately to the hope that it was just a stressed phase, that he would eventually remember the woman he had married, the son they were raising, the promises he had once whispered into her hair. Now, locked in the dark cellar with their sick child, she understood the truth she had refused to face. The man she loved was gone. Leo whimpered again, dragging her back to the present. She adjusted her grip on him, curling her body around his small frame to keep him warm. Only his warmth was terrifying now, a blazing signal that something was very wrong inside him. "Hang on, baby," she whispered against his ear. "Somebody will come. Someone has to come." But as she thought the words, a cold realization set in. Who would come? Eleanor. Her mother-in-law would probably celebrate knowing Chloe was out of the way. Arthur. Her father-in-law kept to himself, always quiet, neutral, watching from the shadows, but never stepping in. He had never defended her against his wife's cruelty. Why would he start now? Friends. She had drifted away from them over the years, swallowed by motherhood and the isolating world of the Hayes family. Nobody even knew she was in that cellar. Her chest tightened as a wave of pure terror washed over her. Was this how they would die? Slowly, in the dark, her son's fever cooking his small body while she held him and watched helplessly? No, she whispered to herself, shaking. No, I won't let that happen. I can't. Time blurred in the darkness. Minutes felt like hours. Her throat grew raw from calling out. Her fists ached from pounding on the door. Eventually, exhaustion forced her to slump against the wall, still holding Leo, tears drying on her cheeks. She was just beginning to drift into a hazy, terrified half-sleep when a faint noise broke the silence. Scrape. Her eyes snapped open. She held her breath. Scrap. It sounded like metal grinding against metal coming from the other side of the door. Her heart leaped into her throat. Was it Ethan returning or someone else? A burglar, someone who thought the cellar was empty and would panic if they found her? She clutched Leo tighter and covered his mouth gently, fearing even the tiniest moan might be heard. Fear coiled in her stomach. Click. The sound of the lock being tampered with echoed in the darkness. This wasn't a key turning smoothly in a familiar lock. It was rough, forced, deliberate. Then came a loud crash as the wooden door splintered under a powerful kick. The sudden shaft of yellow hallway light blinded her for a second. A tall figure filled the doorway, breathless, holding something long and heavy in his hand. Chloe's fingers closed around a piece of broken wood beside her. She didn't know what she planned to do. Fight, scream, shield her son, but every muscle in her body tensed. "Chloe," a rough, trembling voice called. "Chloe, are you in here?" Her vision adjusted. It was Arthur, her father-in-law. He was wearing silk pajamas and slippers, his gray hair a mess, his usually calm, distant face twisted with panic. A metal crowbar hung from his shaking hand. When he saw Chloe and Leo huddled in the corner, he dropped the crowbar with a clang and stumbled toward them, falling to his knees beside them. "My God," he choked, his voice breaking. "That monster. He actually did this. He locked you in here with a sick child." He pressed a rough hand to Leo's cheek and recoiled at the heat. His expression hardened. "There's no time," he said, his tone snapping from horror to sharp focus. "We have to get him to the hospital, now." Chloe's armor of numbness cracked at last and she burst into shaking sobs. Dad, she cried, relief flooding her. How did you know we were here? No questions now, Arthur said hoarsely, shrugging off his robe and wrapping Leo in it. We saved my grandson first. We can deal with Ethan later. He scooped Leo into his arms. Chloe staggered up, her legs numb from hours on the floor, and followed him out of the cellar. In the living room, the bright lights still glowed. Ethan's suitcase was gone. On the coffee table, 2 glasses of wine sat abandoned, lipstick smeared around the rim of one. Chloe's stomach twisted at the sight, but Arthur didn't even look. He rushed to the garage, gently laid Leo in the back seat of the luxury sedan, and gestured for Chloe to get in. The car roared to life and sped out into the night, faster than Chloe had ever seen Arthur drive. Streetlights streaked across his lined face, revealing the depth of his anguish. He left with her, Arthur muttered, his jaw clenched. Jessica, I saw them. I couldn't sleep, so I stepped out on the balcony and watched his car. She was in the passenger seat, laughing. But you and Leo weren't with them. His fingers tightened around the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. I went to your room. Empty. I called Ethan. He didn't answer. I searched the house, and when I passed the cellar, I heard you crying, his voice cracked. I've been blind for too long. I thought he was just confused. I thought he'd come to his senses. I never dreamed he could throw his own wife and child into a dark room and walk away. Chloe wiped her eyes, staring back at Leo in the rearview mirror. His little chest rose and fell rapidly, but he was still there, still breathing. Hang on, baby, she whispered. We're almost there. Just as the hospital's emergency sign came into view, Arthur's phone rang. The number was unknown. He put it on speaker, his voice harsh. Yes? Is this Mr. Arthur Hayes? A tense male voice asked. Are you the emergency contact for vehicle with license plate 51X? Chloe's heart plummeted. That was Ethan's car. Yes, I'm his father, Arthur snapped. What happened? There's been an accident on the Long Island Expressway, the voice said. The driver was critically injured. He's being rushed to the nearest hospital. We need you to... The words dissolved into a buzzing roar in Chloe's ears. Ethan, a car accident, right now. Arthur's hand went slack, and the phone slipped from his fingers to the floor mat. The car swerved for a moment before Chloe reached over and grabbed the wheel. Dad! She shouted. Arthur inhaled sharply, forced himself back into focus, and pulled the car into the hospital's driveway. His eyes, however, seemed far away, filled with a strange mixture of horror and something that looked almost like grim understanding. Retribution, he whispered. It's retribution. Inside the hospital, everything blurred, nurses rushing, forms to sign, Leo being wheeled away behind swinging doors. Chloe stood outside the pediatric emergency room, staring at the closed doors as if her life depended on them opening again. Arthur joined her, his face gray. Chloe, he said quietly, they took Ethan into another ER, down the hall. Chloe followed his gaze. The other set of double doors was lit, a red emergency sign glowing above. Somewhere behind those doors was the man who had locked her in a cellar and walked away, but Chloe felt nothing. No hatred, no love, just an eerie emptiness where her heart used to react to his name. You should go see him, Arthur murmured. He is still your husband. I'm staying with Leo, she replied, her voice calm and firm. Arthur looked at her, then nodded slowly. Whatever he had expected, it wasn't this quiet resolve. He sat down beside her. 2 people, 2 doors, 2 lives divided by glass and time. Hours crawled by. Finally, the pediatric doctor came out, removing his mask with a relieved sigh. You brought him just in time, he said. He had a febrile seizure triggered by a viral infection. We've stabilized him and lowered his fever. He's out of immediate danger, but he'll need a few days of monitoring. Chloe's knees gave way. She sank into a chair, covering her face as sobs of relief shook her. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Leo was moved to the pediatric ward. Seeing him sleeping peacefully at last, his brow no longer furrowed in pain, Chloe felt a wave of quiet peace wash over her. She sat by his bed, holding his small hand to her cheek as if it were the only thing anchoring her to the world. Arthur appeared at the doorway, watching them quietly. He disappeared and returned a short while later, carrying a small key and a folded slip of paper. He sat down across from her and extended them. "Take these," he said. "What is it?" she asked, wiping her eyes. "The key to the safe in my study," Arthur replied. "The combination is Leo's birthday." She blinked. I don't understand. Inside are the company seal, property deeds, and stock portfolios," he said, his tone steady, resolute. "From today onward, they're yours to hold." Chloe stared at him, shocked. "Dad, I can't. Why? Ethan is your son." "Ethan," Arthur cut in, "lost his right to lead this family the moment he locked you and my grandson in that cellar." His jaw tightened. "And your mother-in-law has allowed greed and snobbery to rot her heart. I won't let either of them control what remains of this family." He took her hand and curled her fingers around the key. "Chloe, I've watched you for years. You are kind, patient, and stronger than you know. I trust you more than anyone. Use what's in that safe to protect yourself and Leo. Don't let anyone bully you again. Not in my house. Not in my company." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, but these were different. Tears of gratitude and disbelief. She had never imagined that the man who always stood silently in the background was the one watching her most closely. In that small hospital room, Arthur placed not just metal and paper in her hand, but a sword and shield, and a path she had never dared imagine for herself. Days later, Leo's cheeks were flushed with health again. His laughter slowly returned, though he sometimes woke up whimpering from nightmares about the dark room. Each time, Chloe held him close and whispered, "It's over. Mommy is here. No one will ever lock us away again." As soon as Leo was stable, Arthur returned to the company with Chloe at his side. He introduced her to the executives as the acting decision-maker, bearing his full authority. The board members were stunned. Some frowned, but Arthur's word was law. From that day, Chloe's life became a blur of spreadsheets, contracts, meetings, and late nights. At first, she drowned in unfamiliar terminology, in endless columns of numbers that seemed to mock her in their complexity. But Arthur was patient. Every evening after Leo fell asleep, they sat together at the dining room table surrounded by files. Arthur taught her how to read financial statements, spot discrepancies, ask the right questions, and understand where money was really going. "In business, Chloe," he told her quietly, "numbers lie just as easily as people. Your job is to see where both are hiding the truth." As she dug deeper, a disturbing pattern emerged. Unusual transfers, vague consulting fees, overpriced contracts with unknown firms, projects with mysteriously disappearing funds, and at the center of much of it, Ethan's signature. One company name kept appearing in the records, Allegiant Designs LLC. It received tens of thousands of dollars every month for consulting services. Yet no one in the office seemed to know what consulting they had ever provided. Arthur had never heard of them either. A few discreet phone calls later, with the help of David, a sharp young manager loyal to Arthur, revealed the truth. Allegiant Designs was a luxury interior design firm, legally owned by Jessica. Ethan hadn't just cheated with his body, he had used his father's company to fund his mistress's entire business. The condo in Soho, the sleek sports car Jessica drove, all paid for through company money, disguised as consulting fees and investment properties. The rage that washed through Chloe wasn't fiery, it was cold, precise. She had cried enough. Instead of storming into Jessica's office or screaming in a hospital hallway, Chloe chose another battlefield, one where she now had the power. On a Monday morning, she walked into the accounting meeting in a navy suit, her hair neatly pulled back, her eyes clear and steady. "As of today," she said in a voice that carried to every corner of the room, "all payments to Allegiant Designs LLC are suspended and subject to full audit. Additionally, all corporate credit cards issued to non-employees are to be frozen immediately." A murmur rippled through the room. Miss Hayes, the head accountant, protested nervously. "One of those cards is used by Mrs. Eleanor, and Allegiant's contracts were personally approved by Mr. Ethan. This could cause... Chloe fixed her with a level stare. To my knowledge, the chairman of this company is Mr. Arthur Hayes. My mother-in-law holds no official position. She has no legal grounds to use company funds for personal luxury. As for Allegiant Designs, I have reason to suspect its role in laundering stolen money. Until a full investigation is complete, all their payments stop immediately. Silence. No one argued again. The storm hit within hours. Eleanor, standing in a luxury boutique with arms full of designer clothes, discovered her cherished credit card had been declined. She called Chloe's phone, shrieking so loudly it made Chloe's ear ring. "You ungrateful witch! How dare you freeze my card? This is my family's company, my money!" "Mother," Chloe replied calmly, "the company is an independent entity, not your private wallet. You're welcome to continue shopping with your own funds." She ended the call before Eleanor could spit another insult. Next came Jessica, marching straight into the office wearing a tight dress and an expression caught between panic and entitlement. She was stopped at reception, but Chloe allowed her up. "Chloe," Jessica began with a strained smile, "I heard there's been some confusion about Allegiant Designs payment. Ethan and I..." "There's no confusion," Chloe interrupted. "We've reviewed your files. For 2 years, you have received generous consulting fees without a single deliverable document. No reports, no records, no proof of work. Would you like to provide any now?" Jessica's mouth opened and closed. "You're making a mistake," she hissed under her breath. "Ethan will never allow..." Chloe stepped close, lowering her voice. "Ethan," she whispered, "is lying in a hospital bed, unable to speak. His power, like his excuses, is gone. And I know, Jessica. I know about the condo, the car, the money. I know exactly what he poured into your lap while our son had hand-me-down shoes." Jessica's eyes filled with something ugly. "Fear. Get out," Chloe said quietly. "Before I have security throw you out?" Jessica's heels clicked frantically as she fled the office, but cornered enemies rarely surrender quietly. When Eleanor and Jessica realized their money-beautiful pipeline had been severed, they turned their fury not on the company, but on Chloe's name. Whispers started in the office corridors. "She's cold," some whispered. "Her husband is lying in a bed and she's taking over the company." "She must have someone else," others murmured, glancing at David with suspicion. The rumors spilled out of the building and into gossip forums, and soon a tabloid headline screamed across newsstands. "The venomous wife, billionaire in coma after discovering wife's affair and power grab." The story flipped the truth upside down, painting Ethan as a loving husband and Chloe as the traitor who cheated with another man. Photos ripped out of context, a late-night meeting with David, Eleanor crying at the gates after her card froze, Ethan's weakened body in the ICU were woven into a cruel fiction. Online people who knew nothing of her life tore into Chloe with venomous words. "Gold digger," "viper," "monster!" Chloe's hands shook as she held the newspaper, but her eyes stayed clear. She took a deep breath. "No press conference," she told David when he suggested one. "No public screaming match. They want noise and chaos. We'll give them silence and evidence." She asked David to find the reporter behind the story. His name was Rick, infamous in certain circles for his willingness to twist anything for a large enough fee. The client who had paid him and supplied photos and lies was Jessica. But there was another payment, $2 million from a company called Apex Holdings. The name meant nothing to Chloe, but its projects and money trail meant everything. Apex was a new real estate giant, backed by deep pockets and dirty methods. They bought land by intimidation, manipulated rezoning approvals, and laundered money through shell companies. And some of that money, David discovered, flowed through old projects Ethan had managed. Apex's legal representative? Marcus Hayes, Ethan's disgraced cousin, fired years ago for theft. One of Apex's most prized projects was on a stretch of coastal land in the Hamptons, the exact place Ethan had claimed he would take Chloe and Leo for a family vacation, the same route he was driving the night of his accident, a black truck with no plates, a man with a scar, a brief roadside stop 15 minutes before Ethan's car shattered on the highway. It didn't look like a coincidence anymore. Chloe took everything to a special investigative unit Arthur trusted. Quietly, a major case was opened. While the police prepared their net, Chloe prepared her own stage. She invited the Hayes family elders to a meeting at the estate under the guise of resolving family conflict for Leo's sake. She knew Eleanor and Jessica would smell blood and show up eager to perform their tragedy for an audience. She also made sure a certain group of reporters, including Rick, received anonymous tips and lucrative envelopes to attend. The day of the meeting, Chloe wore a simple white dress, no power suits, no harsh makeup. She greeted the elders with quiet respect. Eleanor arrived leaning on Jessica's arm, eyes red and voice trembling dramatically. Jessica wore deep black, pretending to be the picture of sorrow while her eyes shone with smug anticipation. Eleanor spoke first, spinning the tabloid's fiction into a sobbing monologue. Chloe's alleged affair, her coldness, her plot to seize everything while her poor husband lay helpless. Jessica chimed in, pretending reluctance as she accused Chloe of saying Ethan wasn't worth wasting her youth on, painting herself as a concerned friend. The elders frowned at Chloe. Reporters scribbled eagerly. Cameras flashed. When they finally finished, Chloe stood up. Her face was calm, almost frighteningly so. "Are you done?" she asked softly. There was confusion in the room. This was not the hysterical breakdown they had expected. "Your acting is impressive," she said. "If I didn't live this story, I might have believed you, but now it's my turn." At her signal, David connected his laptop to a large screen. First came footage from the condo building, Ethan and Jessica, holding hands, kissing in the hallway, disappearing into the apartment he had once called an investment for our future. Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica jumped up, stammering about fake videos, but the paper trail that followed said otherwise. Bank transfers, property deeds, car titles, all leading from company money to Jessica's hands. Then came an audio recording. Eleanor's own voice mocking Chloe, raging that her access to money had been cut off, accusing Arthur of choosing that girl over his own wife. The narrative of a poor mother thrown out by a cruel daughter-in-law crumbled in seconds. Finally, Chloe played the recording of Rick bragging to David about being paid to smear her name. Rick's voice admitted everything. Jessica's instructions, the money, the fabricated affair, the plan to ruin Chloe publicly. By the time the audio ended, the room was dead silent. Eleanor's face was drained of color. Jessica was shaking. Rick tried to slip away, but security stopped him. The elders were furious. They condemned Eleanor and Jessica openly, cutting them off from the family name. Reporters now turned their cameras on the real villains. The story flipped overnight. The Viper wife became the wronged woman fighting to protect her child and her company. The sympathy Eleanor had tried to steal now flowed to Chloe, but even as the slander fell apart, the larger, darker truth was still unfolding. Apex Holdings was raided. Marcus and several members of his circle were arrested. Dirty land deals were exposed. Officials who had quietly facilitated their schemes were suspended. The mastermind, however, vanished, slipping like a shadow out of the country. While the police chased ghosts, a quiet miracle began in the hospital. Ethan's finger twitched. Then his eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, he started responding to voices and touch. The doctors called it remarkable. A man they thought would remain in a vegetative state now had a real chance at partial recovery. For Chloe, the news brought no joy, but it did bring a strange sense of inevitability. If Ethan fully woke, he would be the last living bridge to the mastermind. Someone who knew names, numbers, promises made, and threats received. That also meant he was in danger. Chloe and Arthur arranged for trusted guards to watch over Ethan around the clock. No one entered his room without being checked, not even doctors. Then one day, Eleanor showed up. She had lost weight. The arrogance in her eyes had been replaced by haunted emptiness. She begged to see her son. Chloe hesitated but allowed it, under surveillance. Hidden cameras recorded everything. Eleanor walked to Ethan's bedside and dissolved into tears at the sight of his frail body. "My son," she sobbed. "Look what they've done to you!" But as she cried, her words turned darker. "I told you not to get involved with those people," she whispered. "They're devils, and now they're watching us. If you wake up and talk, they'll kill us all. Me, you, even Leo." Her trembling hand slipped into her purse and pulled out a small syringe filled with clear liquid. Chloe, watching from a monitor with the police, felt her blood run cold. I'm sorry, my son, Eleanor whispered. If you go now, they can't hurt you anymore. You'll finally be safe. She raised the syringe toward Ethan's IV line. The door burst open. Police and Chloe rushed in. The syringe clattered to the floor. What were you doing? Chloe shouted, grabbing her arm. Were you about to kill your own son? Eleanor collapsed, sobbing hysterically. They threatened me, she wailed. They said if Ethan woke up and spoke, they'd destroy us. They'd take Leo. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared. Her confession, combined with the evidence from Apex, finally exposed the last layer of the criminal network. The mastermind, a powerful businessman and former friend of Arthur's, was cornered in a seaside villa as he prepared to flee. The raid in Montauk was swift. He was dragged back in handcuffs, a man who had believed himself untouchable, watching his empire crumble to dust. When Chloe saw him through the police car window, she recognized him from old photos, smiling beside Arthur at charity, galas, weddings, groundbreakings. Greed really did turn friends into enemies. The court trials that followed were long and exhausting. Marcus, Jessica, Rick, and many others received sentences that reflected the depth of their crimes. The mastermind, too, was given no mercy. The Hayes Company's name was cleared, its books cleaned, and its reputation slowly restored. Years later, the storm had become a distant horizon behind them. Chloe did file for divorce. The hearing was quiet, almost clinical. Ethan's attorney read a letter from him in which he accepted full responsibility for what he had done, relinquishing his rights to the family assets and custody of Leo. He asked for only one thing, that he be allowed to see his son from time to time. Chloe agreed, not for him, but for Leo. She arranged for Ethan to live in a top rehabilitation center, paid from her own share. It wasn't love. It was closure. A final, quiet act of humanity toward a man who had once been her entire world, then her worst tormentor, and now was just a broken figure paying the price of his choices. Eleanor lived out her days in a small, secluded property belonging to the family, faded and alone. Chloe had food and medicine delivered to her monthly. Forgiveness wasn't necessary for compassion. Chloe understood that some punishments were heavier than prison. Living every day with the knowledge that your own fear almost made you a murderer was one of them. 5 years passed. Under Chloe and Arthur's leadership, the company grew stronger than ever. But the success that mattered most to Chloe couldn't be found in the stock reports. It was in the bright, easy smile of her son. Leo was now in 5th grade, smart, kind, and more empathetic than most adults. She never lied to him about what had happened. She told him about his father's mistakes and his crimes in a way his young heart could understand. She made sure he knew that what Ethan did was wrong, but that he still had the right to see his father, not as a monster. On some weekends, they visited Ethan at the rehabilitation center. Ethan could walk with assistance now, speak in short sentences, and remember pieces of his life, though some memories, especially the darkest ones, seemed mercifully blurred. Each time Leo ran up to hug him, Ethan's eyes filled with tears. He would hold his son's hand and whisper, "I'm sorry. I'm so proud of you," over and over, as if apology and pride were all he had left to give. Chloe watched them from a small distance, her heart steady. The pain of the past had dulled to a scar, visible but no longer raw. One golden afternoon, as she and Leo walked home through a park, the sunlight warm on their faces, Leo suddenly looked up at her. "Mom?" he asked. "Are you happy now?" Chloe paused. The question, simple as it was, reached deeper than any congratulation, any deal, any victory. She looked at her son's bright eyes, at the peaceful sky above, at the life they had built with so much struggle. "Yes," she said with a soft smile. "Mommy is very happy." There had been a time when she believed her life had ended in that dark cellar, when the darkness around her felt like a reflection of the darkness closing in on her heart. But in that very place, from that very moment of abandonment, something had been born. A fierce strength she didn't know she had. A father-in-law's quiet loyalty, and a love for her child that could outlast any betrayal. The cellar door had opened that night, not just freeing her and Leo, but freeing her from the illusions she had clung to for too long. Her dawn hadn't come in a single blaze of light. It had arrived slowly through long nights, painful truths, courtroom battles, and difficult choices. Now, standing in the sun with her son's hand in hers, Chloe realized happiness wasn't the absence of pain or betrayal. It was the decision to rise after both, to build something new and true from the shattered pieces. The violence, the lies, the cellar, the accident, the trial, it was all behind them now. Ahead was a quieter life, not perfect, but real. A life with no more locked doors, no more begging eyes turned to a man who would never come back the way he once was. Only the wide sky, the path she chose herself, and the small, warm hand of the boy who had given her the strength to walk it.